Well, one area of consensus is the powerful role played by social media in this election. One of the factors attributed to Labour's result in particular was the success of their online political advertising and campaigning, especially in connecting with younger voters. But to what extent do we know for certain that all this noisy activity translates into votes? Social media expert Helen Reynolds has taken a look at the role that online networking has played in shaping the result of this election.
We've been talking since at least 2010 about the social media election, when young people start using online networks to make their voices heard and change everything. It didn't happen in 2010, and it didn't really happen in 2015. But last week it started happening big time. Young people actively campaigned online and turned out to vote in huge numbers, producing a result nobody expected. So why now, and what does it all mean? Firstly, citizens, and especially young people, have really learnt to use social media to unite and to campaign. In the past, people have used social media to talk to their friends and to consume news in a more passive kind of way. Second, if social media was the winner in this election, newspapers were the losers. They have fewer readers and less relevance to younger voters. In the past, newspapers could more easily define the issues people talk about and sway preferences. Now it seems they're losing their grip on the British electorate, and social media is filling that void. Thirdly, with social media you can do things that you just can't do with traditional media. You can be direct, you can be conversational, you can be funny, and that more kind of emotional content tends to get filtered out in more traditional media. But why did social media work so well in Labour's favour, while leaving the Conservative campaign on the back foot? In general, much of the social media that the Tories use, which was often ads that were targeted at specific people, was quite negative. So they were trying to demobilise potential Labour supporters rather than mobilise support. In contrast, Labour tried to get people to share and to be involved, and most importantly, vote. And during the campaign, Corbyn was popping up everywhere. He was chatting to UK rapper JME, taking questions live through popular Facebook pages, and being supported by modern celebrities on Snapchat. By contrast, May did an early live Facebook session via a traditional media broadcaster's page, and she looked quite uncomfortable, particularly when Corbyn crashed it. What I think worked really well for Labour this time is that the supporters made content that was incredibly creative. So it was often inspiring, and sometimes it was quite moving. So when people have an emotional response to that kind of material, they're more likely to share it across their networks. When your friends are sharing material across their social media, it's much more organic and much more credible to those who see it than paid-for adverts. Whichever way you slice it, the social media genie is officially out of the bottle, and there's no turning back. Social media is here to stay, and politicians are going to have to take it far more seriously.
And that was Helen Reynolds, and I'm joined now by The Guardian social media editor Elena Cresci and Kevin Maguire, associate editor of The Mirror. Good to have you both with us. Was it really a very sharp edge for Labour in this campaign?
Well, I think the difference between Labour and the Conservatives in this campaign is that Labour managed to capture the use in the way that Conservatives didn't. There was an amazing tweet that sort of pointed out that the Conservatives spent all this money on Facebook advertising, but Labour were getting memes made for them for free. And that was the key difference here, where like all the smart, young, exciting, teens and older young adults were making all this stuff for free for Labour.
Well, there's a point there about strategy, isn't there? So maybe are people wrong to say this was brilliant strategic thinking by Labour if actually they were simply benefiting from stuff that was being made for them, for nothing?
I think it's a little bit of that, but there was also Labour cottoned onto it very quickly and encouraged it in a way that I think the Conservatives would struggle to, because the Conservatives are seen as like the older party, I guess.
Yeah.
It's
Kevin?
It was a big change on 2 years ago when the Conservatives used Facebook and social media much better. Labour this time did it as a strategy. They knew two things would possibly go in their favour. One is with broadcasters come in, equal representation, airtime, people could see Corbyn uncut rather than just seeing him in the odd news clip. And secondly, on social media, they put a lot of effort into it. It was part of their deliberate strategy at the beginning. And while with the Conservatives it seemed to be, you know, dad dancing, older people trying to wrestle with this new social media, they just used people who are on it all the time, so there was nothing forced about it, and it came across that way.
Just thinking about the concept of, you know, old-fashioned canvassing, you knock a door, you try to convince someone who's clearly not sure which way they're going to vote for you. You know, there's an effort there to convert, if you like. Does this social media activity convert, or does it simply cement loyalties that are there already?
Well, the Conservatives try to do it very negatively to scare people off Corbyn, where he'd be painted as a terrorist sympathiser when he wasn't a pacifist. They went both ways. Well, I think Labour was far more positive, and it was to try and enthuse and get you to go out and vote. And they deliberately targeted young people who in the past have not voted. And Jeremy Corbyn said from the very beginning, I'm going to get them to vote. I didn't believe him, but he managed to achieve it.
It's because he spoke to them as, like, on their level. It's like a big part of it, where I think there's a tradition with politicians to not take young people very seriously because they don't vote. And this time Corbyn was like, no, I want to listen to them. And he did that through things like, I thought the Unilad Big Issue collaboration was spectacular. They had the Big Issue, which is, you know, a very well-respected magazine across the country, and then you had Unilad, a Facebook page that maybe isn't as respected as the Big Issue, but has a humongous UK following.
Of course.
And that was just genius in my mind. You had the best of both worlds.
Was it an unfair reference there to the Theresa May experience on Facebook with Robert Peston? That was an attempt on a very big platform, and she was taking questions. She was taking questions which were coming through from people live, so to speak. That was part of the social media strategy, and that wasn't attack stuff, was it?
No, I thought it was slightly unfair, and we mustn't, we don't want to be in an avalanche position where you have one form of campaign and then all campaigning changes completely. I think you're on Facebook, people will watch it. And there was very big viewing figures for that. But nevertheless, if you can get celebs involved, that helps. If you can get, grime artists and so on, you will go to another area.
And that was just incredible. Just the whole, like, Grime for Corbyn thing is just the kind of movement that is such a joy to see in politics, and particularly from young people.
I'm bound to pick up as well on the newspaper, the press reference, because we saw an incredibly aggressive campaign, certainly in the Mail and the Sun, in the final stages of the campaign against Jeremy Corbyn. And when you look at the result, is it therefore too soon for us to start drawing big conclusions about whether the press in some forms has had its day in terms of swinging millions of votes?
I don't think it's had its day, but it was a huge defeat for the Sun, the Express, the Mail, the Telegraph, who threw the kitchen sink at Corbyn. There was smear after smear after smear. Theresa May was praised as the great leader, and they didn't get the result they expected. I think newspapers are still very, very powerful. Broadcasting's still very powerful. But people now can go for the information they want, where they want. There are far more voices. And I think that's a good thing in a democracy. It's even the fact that candidates and MPs themselves, you can have a website, you can be on Facebook, Twitter, you can communicate directly rather than having to go through the prism, often distorting prism of a paper, TV, radio. So I wouldn't write off papers, but we on papers accept now people get their information from elsewhere too.
And a critical thing in a Welsh context as well, Lena, really, when you think of, the fact that people in Wales have had traditionally far less of a choice in terms of the Welsh-focused media that they can really use, the social media provision then adds a completely new dimension.
Well, this is what I'm hoping will come out of sort of this new media age, is that there will be more stuff for Welsh people online, at least. We haven't got as vibrant a scene as, say, Scotland at the moment, but I think there's fertile ground there, and I think this has been proven, and Wales is traditionally, Welsh Labour heartland, so there's no reason why this kind of energy for Corbyn couldn't translate into some sort of energy for Welsh media. I mean, that might be a bridge too far, I'm not sure. Maybe I'm being too hopeful.
But I mean, you make the point about Welsh Labour, obviously, in some of its traditional heartlands in Wales, but all Welsh parties really could be looking at, at this kind of provision in a completely new way. The final point to you both is, will it change the nature of campaigning? Let's say we get another election, I don't know, within the next year. If that happens, are we likely to see another step change in the way people use social media in campaigning terms?
I think we will. I think the other parties will look where it worked for Labour this time round, where it worked for Donald Trump in the States, almost worked for the SNP in Scotland in 2014 in that referendum. I think they will look and they will go for it. It won't mean you don't have to go knocking on doors, you don't have to put leaflets out, you'll still need meetings, you'll still want to be on TV, radio and get stuff in papers, but social media is, the opportunities are absolutely endless.
Yeah. Final thought.
I think definitely it will change. What will be interesting to see is if it will go well for the Conservatives in future, or maybe for any other party that is traditionally seen as a little bit older. That's the thing that I think is key, because I think Labour has that young base now, and they've got that advantage. They just need to use it.
Thank you both very much. Good to have you with us. And that's all we have time for tonight. If you'd like to get in touch with us about what's been discussed, anything else really, email us at thewalesreport@bbc.co.uk, or you can follow us on social media where the discussion continues. But we'll be back next week. Thanks for watching. Diolch am eich cwmni chi. Nos da. Have a very good night.